Welcome to the podcast, Creating Confident Communication. And I am so excited to introduce to you today Kenneth Scott. He is a passionate advocate of social health and the creator of the Social Health Brand Program, a transformative framework that empowers individuals to build meaningful connections, expand opportunities, and redefine their impact. As a former professional athlete turned speaker, social health entrepreneur, and professor at Rice University, Scott has dedicated his career to helping students, athletes, and professionals leverage the power of relationships to navigate transitions, grow their brands, and take control of their future. Scott has worked with leading organizations and institutions, delivering keynote speeches, workshops, and programs that equip individuals with the tools and position themselves, build social capital, and create opportunities beyond their immediate circles. I am so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate you for even allowing me the space to be on. So thank you.
Well, it was so awesome. I got the chance to meet you and hear you not only speak, but rap, which was so cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, if you tell all of us a little bit about, just a little bit about you. Like, how did you, I mean, you've got this huge, amazing bio, but tell us about the younger version of Kenneth, like how you got from where you are to now. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
That's a good one. So initially, I was born in Texas and I was raised in California. Me and my mom left to California when I was 4 years old. My mother, she had a disease called lupus, which is a chronic disease, which means that there's no cure for it. And in addition, it's autoimmune disease, which means that your immune system that's supposed to be protecting you, like from the flus, the colds, COVID nowadays, it was her body fighting against her. And so growing up, it was just me and my mom for the longest. My father, he was in and out of jail, on and off of drugs. And kind of a side note to my father, he's actually named Kenneth Scott. So I'm a junior. My dad is actually called the Great Kenneth Scott. That's what his name was. And during his life, he had some ways that shifted his path and um, not in the best situation. So me and my mom, we went to California. Initially, we lived with my auntie and my uncle in San Bernardino County, and then once my mom got her income check, we moved into our own place. It was a 600 square foot apartment, and we were just man, just appreciative for the little things that we had. And now that I'm looking back at it, it wasn't very materialistic. It was just all about me and my mom. How can I best support her? How she could best support me? And so growing up, man, I was very introverted. People wouldn't think so, but I was super introverted. I didn't really talk to people as much. Uh, and I was clung to my mother for the most part, obviously because of illness. And then at 9 years old, I was fortunate enough to have someone step into our lives, which is my stepfather. I call him Pops. And my Pops, what I tell people is that he gave me the drive. And if I had to put it in like a vehicle analogy, my mom gave me that fuel that I needed to be able to endure and have that capacity along this journey. But like my stepfather gave me the drive and the direction and the path to let me know where I need to go, how I need to get to places. And so with him in my life, that allowed me to be a highly decorated athlete coming from a kid who was super shy and stayed in the house to now this outgoing kid who now has a lot of friends and etc. And so I really credit my stepfather for allowing me to get out of my shell, give me some exposure, create relationships and build relationships to be the person that ultimately I am now today. And so growing up, it was tough. Section 8 food stamps, welfare programs, of course. And then the area wasn't great because of the area we lived in. So gang violence, drugs, you name it. And so a lot of people, because of my background in sports and they saw the future in it, they protected me so I wouldn't be associated with those type of things. And so looking back at my story, I'm kind of fortunate in a way because I guess I was guided, and protected by a higher power because the things that I saw from my friends and where they ended up and where I am now is just like, man, I'm thankful for whatever shielded me to get me out of that situation, to get exposure, to be able to now come back to like places like where I grew up to give kids that I see in the neighborhood that just needs a little bit more exposure, to be able to give them hope and expand. So long story short, a little bit about me growing up was just a shy and reserved kid, still am to a certain degree, to now this person who just loves talking to people. I think I could talk to a brick wall and it can somehow respond back to me. But yeah, that's a little bit about who I am and where I came from.
So did you start, that's amazing. Did you start playing sports around 9 or did you play when you were younger? Was it just around that time?
No, that's a great question. So I started playing sports at the age of 9. My cousin, I went to my cousin's football practice. It was crazy. Went to my cousin's football practice, and I looked up to my cousin. He was like a brother to me because when we moved from Texas to California, we stayed with him. And so my cousin, I went to his football practice, and I'm on the sideline with my uncle, and me and my uncle, we're just throwing passes to each other on the sideline while my cousin's at practice. And then after practice, me and my uncle, we went into the center of the field and he started throwing me long passes and I was just catching them like really naturally. And the coaches, they was looking at me, it was like, man, this kid has some good hands. Right. And so they brought me over. It was like, have you ever thought about playing like sports, like in an organized form? And then my uncle looked to him, was like, his mom doesn't have the means to pay in order to be a part of an organization. And so they told me to like move over a little bit so they can have a conversation, like a grown-up conversation. And then they brought me back and they were like, hey, we want to sponsor you so that you can be able to be a part of a team, be a part of sports. And so that was my introduction into organized field right there. It was just literally a kid running, catching the passes from his uncle, people seeing the talent that I had within me and wanted to like invest into me and invest in my future to be able to become something. And it was something different. Like when I was on the football field at that age, at that practice, like I don't know what it was, but like when the coaches said something, like it sparked something in me. I remember the coach was like, whatever you feeling, whatever you got going on at home, leave it all out here on the field today. And I just resonated with that. And I just felt like that was like a calling or where I needed to be. And it's just crazy how everything aligned in my favor to where I was able to be a part of the program and was the youngest on the team. They thought I was older. I was the youngest on the team playing with kids 2 to 3 years above me, but it was great. I appreciated that. So that was the time.
Wow, that's where the hype comes in. That's awesome. So how old were they? Like 12 when you were 9?
Yep, they were 12 and I was 9 turning 10. So yeah, so they were 12, 11, 12-year olds and I was 9 turning 10. And I was, because of my height, I was the youngest, but I looked like I was around the same, age as them. So it
And
was
definitely probably had that talent. So you had never played before you were just passing out there having fun.
Yep, never played. So I played basketball. That was one of the things that I love, basketball. And that's a funny story too. So growing up, I thought I was going to be an NBA player. And so going into high school, I told my stepfather, I was like, man, I only want to play basketball. This is all I want to do. And my stepfather was like, you're 6'2" right now. You probably, your dad's 6'3", 6'4", your real father 6'3", 6'4", your mom's about 5'9", 5'8". You're probably gonna reach about 6'5", maybe the best height, and you're like 180 right now. He said, but if you play football with your height and your size, you will already be at a more of an advantage in making you more likable to appease like the colleges and even the NFL players. Like as you grow, he said, if I'm you, I would think about playing football. And so that's when I really went like 100 miles into football is from that conversation from my stepfather. Because originally, early on, I played basketball. Then I stepped into football when I was 9 years old. And then once I got to high school, my stepfather had that conversation with me and was like, hey, I really think you should think about football long term. And then it was all she wrote from there.
Well, which sport do you like better? Just curious. Did you love basketball?
It hurt my soul. I
Mhm.
love basketball with everything that I had, but something about football that was just different. I don't know what it was. I I love that. I love them equally. It's weird. So in basketball, I translated all those skills into the football field. So the type of receiver I am, if people were to look at it, it's like the guy that goes up and catches the passes over people when we're in the crowded spaces. I'm catching passes in traffic and things of that nature. I'm a big body receiver. And so in basketball, I was doing the same thing. I would go up and grab rebounds. I was an aggressive type player. So literally, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to translate everything I had in basketball, put it to the football field and then that's just kind of like where I get the same love out of it, if that makes sense. I know it sounds weird, but I get the same love because I incorporated basketball skills into the football field.
Well, awesome. I love that. So tell me how you went from this 9-year-old into did you start playing up through, I mean, what was it? Like competition teams? Where did you make your way up to college and all that? I'd love to hear that part.
Yeah, so after I got done at that 9-year-old stake, I continued playing throughout. We call it Junior All-American. It's like an organization to where people will fund, well, people pay to play. But luckily, I was on sponsorship and people paid for me to play. And so did that until I got into high school. And then once I got into high school, it was all she wrote. So as a freshman, I was on varsity, really good, had gained some experience. And then my sophomore year hit. And my sophomore year in high school is when I kind of blew up. I remember going to a camp at like USC and UCLA, and they labeled me as a special talent
Mm,
and the person that, people should start getting eyes on as far as colleges. And so I did well after my sophomore year. And then going into my junior year, a lot of colleges was reaching out to me as far as for scholarships. And I wound up being ESPN top 150 player as a sophomore in the nation. And then going into
dang.
my junior year, I remember after this one camp, they were like, I proved that I'm like one of the nation's best receiver prospects. And so it was just going out there getting exposure. That's kind of like how the notoriety got more to me in that sense, as far as like once I figured out my performance was there, I started going to these camps, people started taking a liking to me and my ability. And then I kept on soaring. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about the downfalls. And I think the downfall, one of the biggest downfalls for me came in my junior year, going to my senior year.
Mhm,
So I had a stress fracture on my tibia, and the tibia is sits right between like your kneecap and your ankles, like right in the middle.
mhm,
I had a stress fracture, and I had to wear a stimulator for on that same spot for 10 hours a day.
wow.
Yeah, 10 months, 10 hours a day, in order to get back on the field. And so it was to the point where I got into the season, I had to wear shin guards, like soccer shin guards, because if someone would have hit my leg, it would have snapped it. And so
And was it painful? It was a lot of pain you were
it was super painful. I had to take like pain pills because like the impact that you make when you're running, like it would like vibrate that area. And so a lot of like for like 6, 7 months, I couldn't
Mhm,
really run. I couldn't do anything. So I can make sure that stress fracture healed, because if the stress fracture would have gotten more, I wouldn't have been able to play. And so going into college, a lot of teams didn't know. We kind of massaged it to where like people won't pull my scholarship because the only outcome with them be is putting a metal rod from the top of my knee down to my ankles in order to strengthen it, and that's like a dang near career ender,
mhm,
and especially you talking about a high school kid. So, my coaches did a great job, kind of like hiding that piece around it. And
mhm,
so people would like be like, "Man, why are you wearing shin guards?" I'm like, "Oh man, I'll have to make up an excuse so that what they won't know the real issue behind it."
mhm,
And then the second piece that was troublesome in my journey was grades. Here I was, this top athlete, and I thought that athletics was just going to be the thing that gets me through it no matter what. And I remember Stanford and Fresno State coming to my school to offer me a scholarship. It was in my junior year, and they went through my transcripts. I had all C's, like nothing but
mhm,
C's. I had like an A or B in like electives. And I remember Stanford was like, "Hey, we were coming here to offer you a scholarship, but due to your grades, we're not able to, you can't get into our school."
mhm,
And then Fresno State, they offered me, but the head coach was like, "Look, if you get your grade point average to a 2.3,
mhm.
right, we'll get you a scholarship." And so luckily I got it up to there. I ended my high school career with a 2.3 GPA.
Awesome.
To be able to get those scholarships, like, I mean, I was verbally awarded those scholarships, but in order to
Yeah.
like really get those scholarships, I had to get my grades up. And so I had to do a lot of, man, how a lot of repair work. And so
Mhm,
that made me think about the big picture. It's like, oh shoot, I need to get on my horse as far as discipline in the school, on the field, off the field, like every aspect of this, I have to make sure it's aligned. So uh, high school was a very adventurous for me coming into it. Well, coming
mhm.
in,
Well, I appreciate you sharing the hard times because sometimes people see only all the great and they're like, did he have any struggle along the way? But you teach now. So you're teaching in a college, right? That's how do you like that?
man, I freaking love teaching. I think that's one of the best things for me. And I look back at my career, it wasn't really so the that I was a bad student. I just didn't really relate to what was being taught, or the teachers wasn't making the content relatable to me to where I thought like, oh, I need to really put my skills in it. And so now as a teacher, I make sure that the content that I am teaching is relatable to them to where they can grasp it and apply it into their everyday lives so that they can take it more serious. And so as a teacher, I kind of looked up to into it. Actually, to be very honest, I looked up to it. So I'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
So I work with a nonprofit program, and they had brought me in because they wanted me to build a program and scale a program for individuals who created harm in a relationship to be better parents, partners, and people.
Mhm.
And so I was sitting in the office of the social media coordinator lady, and I'm on the couch, and she's talking with her wife on the phone. And her wife was, I was eavesdropping. Her wife was like, "Yeah, one of our lecturers is not going to be able to teach this semester to the incoming freshmen." And I'm like, "Oh shoot," I'm just eavesdropping. And she was like, "We're looking for someone who can not only teach the content about like domestic violence and healthy relationships and etc. Not only do they need to know that content, they also need to know how to deal with student athletes in the class." And so I'm sitting in the back, like, "Oh, this is my time. Like, this is go time. Like, let's go." And so after she got off the phone, I was like, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the topic was so compelling. But I have the perfect person for you to teach that class. And she was like, "Who?" I was like, "Me. I could teach it. Like, I lived this experience. I know the content. I know how to deal with student athletes. Like, the class is not all student. It's about maybe a handful of student athletes that were called ruckus in the class, making it not easy for the other students." So I was like, I got great classroom management. And so that's how I got introduced into Rice as a lecturer in that aspect. And so people always ask me, "Man, do you have a master's degree?" I'm like, "No." Like, how did you? And so I always tell them that story. And so I just look at my story as like, man, it's just being at the right place, right time, good opportunity. Your brand and the way people think of you is like really high, like super important. And so from there, like doing that piece, I was like, you know what? How else can I get indoctrinated into Rice for another course or something that I want to teach, like a curriculum that I built?
Mhm.
And so I networked with the student athlete department. I sent them all an email saying, "Hey, the student athletes in your class, here's a list of them. They did amazing. As a former athlete myself, I appreciate their blah, blah, blah." And so I was just giving them a lot of kudos, and they responded, was like, "Nobody's ever done this towards our student athletes, and we appreciate you." And so I went to their offices, and I told them, I was like, "Hey, I would love to, teach a curriculum helping these student athletes transition from one field to the next, because the biggest transition is once they get done with sports, like they trying to figure out who they are." And they were like, "Oh, you need to meet with such and such, such and such, such and such." I did that. And now I teach my course, which is social health brand curriculum, to, in Rice University. And it's getting so, as far as the exposure to where like the vice president of brand strategy was like, "Man, we need more eyes on this. Can this be on our online learning capacity?" Different universities is like, "Man, can we come in and bring you in to facilitate these workshops?" Not only just for student athletes, but for general students and aspiring entrepreneurs, because it's all about how do you grow your social capital, right? How do you build your brand to make you not only successful in this field, but also in any other field and transfer those skills? And so, long story short, that's how I got into education. It was just about right place, right time, and being competent and enough to be able to present that value.
Well, you know what? I love that, and I can see your passion in
Yeah.
speaking and teaching because that's what happened to me. I kind of fell into a teaching job. I'm like, wait, this is and then they're kids, right? But
Yes.
I've been so grateful, and I can bring fun, and it's so cool. But what I love most about what you said is with this podcast being creating confident communication, it began with you. Those
Mm,
opportunities wouldn't have shown up if you wouldn't have felt like, hey, I can do this. This is something I want to do. I'm capable. You just sometimes I want to share this for people that you feel like you want to do something, but we're too afraid. We're too
mm,
afraid to say to give ourselves praise or say, well, we can do this or whatever it might be. But I love that you said that. And I don't know if you have any tips for anybody who wants to have more confidence or have better communication, anything that you
Yeah. I don't know how religious or spiritual your group is, but for me, for the longest time, people used to always tell me, uh, like there's faith. Like if you have faith, faith is not only just having faith and being hopeful, but faith is also in the action of things.
Mhm.
And so as long as you're taking a step forward in that direction, like it's showing whoever you believe in, that you are staying true to what you say you was going to do. That's the desirable in your heart. And so for me, it's like whatever that one next step is, I'm gonna do it. So like my one next step was like, okay, how can I reach out to this person? Okay, I did that. Okay, what's the next step? So I looked at it like from a not from a macro level too much, but from a micro level. What are the next three things I could do, like one step at a time, and just built it upon there. So that's the tip I'll give anybody. Whatever your grandiose vision is, like the macro level, try to figure out like how you can get those micro steps along the way so it won't be too overwhelming for you. And you just literally take it, literally, it may sound cliche, one step at a time. And the best thing I would always tell people is like really sell that vision to people. Cause like once you sell your vision to people and they see how passionate you are about it, they want to get into that boat and row that thing with you to shore. Like people love that. They're like, man, I love that. Look how beautiful that yacht is. Come on, let's go. And they want to go to shore with you. And so that's what I tell people, man. It's just like whatever that vision is, like it don't matter what it is. It can be the smallest step, but as long as you keep on doing it day in, day out, get 1% better at it, like over time, it's going to compound and get to where you want to go. And so that's what I love telling people.
So what I love is you just got your foot in the door and then you were able to introduce what you're passionate about and they already loved you and they were seeing success. So why do you like to teach about social health? I'd really want to hear a little bit about this.
Yeah, the reason why I love teaching about social health is because like the beauty in all things is relationships. And so what I tell people, because I've done a corporate sales for a long time, and one of the leading producers was saying, like, hey, I'm not in the business of sales, I'm in the business of relationships. And I was like, dang, I didn't even think about that. Because oftentimes people think like the only salespeople are the people in sales, when really everybody is a salesperson. Like you're communicating who you are to another person at all times.
Mhm.
And so for me, the power of social health is like, how can you not only build a relationship within yourself, but with other people? And the best way to do that is you have to know who you are. That's where personal branding comes in. Like you have to know your true authentic self. Like what do you love? What is it that you're good at? What is it that you feel like are issues that you can address that can meet a need that makes you fulfilled? And ultimately what's rewarding to you, and then from there like communicating that to people, like to sell that vision to people so that they can see it as well. And so like social health is all about like hearing other people's stories, aligning with your story, and then presenting that value like that's mutually beneficial so that two people can go the same way. And so that's what I love social health about, because it's not really about you, it's about like how can your story and someone else's story like intertwine and connect to build something more purposeful. It's all about building community, and that's really what I
And
love to
having those
do.
connections.
That's
Well,
it.
tell me, because you're an author and I got to look and see all these amazing books. Like what got you into writing? And it's just tell me a little bit about that.
Man, when I was younger, this is back in my introverted ways. When I was younger, I would never talk to people about my problems, talk to people about anything. And so I remember one day being in my room and I was writing something. I was writing some poetry, but I was writing some poetry, and my mom came like looking in the room like, "Hey, what you doing?" I was like, "Oh, nothing. I'm just writing." And so my mom was like, "Well, it seems like you don't really like talking out your feelings or like telling them to people. How about you do this? How about you write it on paper? You give it to me or write it in your music, and then I'll listen to it later." And so that's what writing is for me, is just a way of an expressing to people like in a non-judgmental way of like what I want to get across. And so like I've been doing that ever since I was young. And so like my writings, like for my first book that I did was a memoir, which is about my mom. And my mom, when and during her latter part of her years, she wrote in her journal. And so I took all those journals and took the black and white and made it colorful per se, and like made the stories cohesive to what she was aligned to. Because my mom, her biggest wish was she wanted to be a published author. Obviously, she passed and wasn't able to, so I wanted to fulfill that same uh, desire and need for her. And so I was like, you know what? That's gonna be my first project. And so that's what I did. And it's just all about her life journey through being a mom, lupus, and a kidney transplant. And the beautiful thing about that, what I tell people all the time, if you're with someone with lupus, like you have to build community in order to manage what you're going through. So this whole time I've been indoctrinated about community building and relationship building. And so the series, my book series, which is four of them, which is Pressure No Match for Purpose, it's just taking you on a journey that like from literally that childhood moment till like where I am at, well, where I was at 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago when I did the book. It's take you on a journey to let you know that look, the places I've been, the places I've gone, I didn't get there by myself. Like I'm showing people like along the journey, there's going to be people that you got need to lean on. In order for me to play sports, I needed other people to invest in what I want to do as far as dream wise. And so like my series of Pressure No Match for Purpose, it's tailored towards athletes trying to get to the next level as far as like college or the next field in their life. But it's really a guide teaching them how to transition from one field to the next and literally showing them like you're going to need other people to help you get along that journey. So that was another one. And in my two children's books, which is Brooklyn's Dreams Big and Kinley's dang Brooklyn Dreams Big, and then dang, I forgot my other my
Now these are,
Kinley's
you
best
just have the
friend.
two girls, right? So
Yes,
you
the
told me,
two
okay.
girls. Yeah, so I got Brooklyn Dreams Big, and then Kinley's best friend. So Brooklyn Dreams Big. It was during a part where I was like, man, I want to write something. So if I'm not here, it's a message to Brooklyn to keep dreaming big, no matter what.
Love it.
So that was a book for her. And then for my youngest daughter, she was like, well, I want a book too. So
You're gonna keep writing books, each kids, right?
I'm writing books. So that's why I got into writing, just as an expressive element to give people lessons and messages to help them along their journey. And so that's why I'm gonna
Oh,
continue to write books. And
I want to read the one about your mom. That's just like such an amazing tribute that you could help her have that dream come true. And the thought that came to me, you know, as those people when you were 9 chose to invest in you, you're
mhm,
now giving back, helping, right? It's that cycle, that give and receive that's so cool that you're able to help other people. So do you get to go speak often? Tell us a little bit about how we can hear more about learning from you. Do you tell us some
yeah.
more about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to places and kind of deliver the story and deliver, who I am. It don't matter if it's athletics, conferences, summits, workshops, whatever it is. Basically going in, delivering a message tailored towards social health. Like, how do you build, maintain, and improve relationships, not only for yourself, but for other people too. So I'm fortunate enough to get booked at many places to deliver that and also perform music, which is something I love too. It's another element of storytelling for me to take people into my world. So
Well, see, that's the part we didn't get to talk about that was my favorite because I got to hear you
come
rap
on.
and I thought, tell me how you got into the music part because it was amazing and
Yeah.
so entertaining.
Yeah, the music, it was just me. I started when I was young. So I started doing poetry at first because I thought that was a way of me being able to talk to girls because I was shy, I was reserved, and I was like, okay, if I write something, I could be able to give it to them instead. It was back in the days where we used to write letters, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that was my way. Like poetry was my expressive way to talk to girls in the beginning when I was younger. And then that eventually evolved into like, I don't want to talk to people about my problems. I'd rather just put it on instrumentals and let people, like whatever stage and phase I'm at in my life, people will know through the music. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. And it all started with my mom. Like my mom was just telling me, like, hey, if you don't want to talk to me about it, put it in your music and I'll listen to it later. And I still take that approach now. Like, even though I can't talk to my mom anymore, in the physical world, I for me, doing music nowadays is more so a spiritual element to it because like I'm writing, but it's extending beyond me. It
Yes.
sounds weird, but
No,
it's
I get
more,
it.
yeah.
I
So
bet she'd be so proud of you and those beautiful girls that you have too, because she never met your girls, obviously, right?
oh, and a crazy story about that. So when I was first the thought came in to like get her journals, publish it. I remember sitting in this office and I had the author's copy in my hand. And my oldest daughter, Brooklyn, she comes running in and she sits on my lap. And as she's sitting on my lap, I, have the book in my hand and I'm proud and I show it to her. And my Brooklyn, she looks down and then she looks at me and she was like, Daddy, who's that? Because she never seen my mom. And in that part right there for me, it was like really emotional because I was like, man, how can I be able to share my mom's experiences, share my mom love, share my mom lessons and messages to my daughter who never met her, but I can still provide that lineage between them. And so that's why I'm so like passionate about writing nowadays because I can deliver those moments intergeneral you get what I'm
Generational.
saying? Uh, as
Yes.
they move forward, so that's why right nowadays still, like if I'm gone tomorrow, Brooklyn will be able to see my thoughts,
Right.
and so
And
yeah,
she was able to know her on a deep level because it was her writing. And it was so, I bet that was been a really amazing experience.
yeah, and it's cool because she asks me questions all the time, like, "Mom, what was Grandma Trish like? Like, what was Grandma like? What was this that?" And it's crazy because my mom passed in December 2016, and Brooklyn was born uh 10 months later. So
So
like,
they got to hang out, right?
yeah, like it was like, dang. So it was just a crazy experience. And it was during that time where I was in the transition of football, like, man, do I still go for it or do I hang up the football cleats and be a stable father? And so I won't repeat the cycle of not having a father, my body,
Hmm.
so it was that to December 2016 till literally August of 2000, well, really till Brooklyn was born. It was just me figuring out life because I stopped playing football, which was like the my career. My mom passed away, which was the driving force for everything that I wanted to do. I was about to have a baby. My
Hmm.
wife's in Oregon while I'm out here. Well, I was out in Utah at that time training. And I didn't have no job, no career, no money. And so I'm sleeping on my scholarship donor family, who's like my real family's couch,
Hmm.
uh, trying to figure out what I want to do with life, like going through all these spare of emotions, about to be a dad, no income, lost my mom going through grief, lost my career, lost my identity. And so
Hmm.
that moment right there was pivotal for me. And so honestly, when I look back, I don't really know how I made it through. Well, actually, I do know how. The only reason I made it through is because the relationships of people, honestly.
Hmm.
My scholarship donor family, my wife and her family, like everybody that I was connected to helped like pull me out of that rut. And
Hmm.
that's why I believe social health is so impactful because if I didn't have that community of people, I honestly would have been probably like my father. I'll be
Hmm.
honest with you. And the reason why I say I would have been like my father, because when my father, he was named the great Kenneth Scott, it was a celebratorial factor. Once that celebratory and fame went out the window for him, his family no longer was associated with him that much. He fell into drugs. And with
Hmm.
him falling into drugs, he hung around the wrong people and he lost himself. His family left and then he was by himself. He didn't have nobody.
Hmm.
He was just in that rut. And so I'm just thankful that I didn't have to repeat that same cycle my father did. And so that's why I believe why social health is so like powerful.
That's absolutely amazing. Someone was telling me just barely because they've been wrapped up in the addiction that one of the ways that when you know who you are, when you
Mhm.
have that strong identity, it helps take away those addiction issues, all those things, because you know that foundation of what you want. And so you chose to let go of the football and go on this other path. And have you been happy?
Yeah, I have. I look back at it because like people will ask, like, man, do you wish you was playing football? Because like my coaches and stuff like that, my coach, my coaches that coached me at Utah, they were like, man, you should still be playing football right now. And I look at it, I'm like, man, but if I would have been playing football still, would I have been able to enjoy all the rest of the things that's going in my life right now? Like doing the things that I like from a kid that I recognized I still love to do, like the rioting, I probably
Mhm.
never know. Like I just feel like I don't know if I would have been at this point in my life if I
Right.
would have still been playing football, doing the things that I'm doing. Because now my guys that played football, now that they're done transitioning, they looking to me like, man, can you help me? All I ever known was football. I don't know what I want to do. Now they're lost, they're depressed. And being that I can utilize my story to help them get through it, I feel like me not making it, quote unquote, even though I got professional opportunities, me not making it, quote unquote, is like a guiding light for others to get through their situation and that missing puzzle piece to help them so they won't fall in that rut. And so do I wish I was playing football? Yeah, but then again, the outcome of it is much more beautiful for me because the things I'm able to enjoy now.
Well, and I was talking to one of my mentors. Sometimes these things that fall into our life aren't exactly what we want, right? Like we're like, wait, why am I doing this when this is what my goal was? But the truth is, like, you've got all those books written, and who's to say that you would have, you know? And sometimes there's a bigger picture for it, that we're supposed to do something bigger. And the fact that you get to help others because you've gone through this to find what they can do and how they can show up as fathers, that makes a big difference.
That is true. Because when I look back at it, my main culprit for wanting to play football was the money piece. Like I've always felt like, oh, the money will help me with everything. The money will help me everything. And now I look at it, it's like, yeah, I would have been financially good, but like mentally would I have been good? Like physically, like
Mhm.
would I have been able to endure like all those things now? Like, I just think about it like was the only now I look back, it's like, man, the only thing I really would have missed in football was just the money aspect,
Mhm.
And I'm like, dang. And so, now I'm able to do the things that I'm really passionate and really enjoy, really love doing. It's like, did I really lose out on anything? I mean,
Well,
yeah,
and I think I heard they brought you back to come and sing or do some kind of big performance, right? Tell me
yes.
just real quick about that because that
Oh
was super cool.
man, man, that was amazing. So I love music, and it kind of goes back to relationships. So I had an idea in my head. I was like, man, I would love to perform at halftime with my song that's dedicated to Utah youth. And so I knew a lady who knew of someone that was part of Little Caesars corporate office, and I'm gonna tie how Little Caesars is involved into this.
Mhm.
So every workout either myself or my other friends on the football team, we would go to Little Caesars right there off of 400 South, right there by the stadium, and get Little Caesars to either make weight, to get hungry, and Little Caesars was like that safe haven for us to eat, right? And so I was like, man, I would love to do something in collaboration with Little Caesars. And so I got connected with the band department for to allow me to do the performance, but also Little Caesars pitched in to let them know like, hey, whoever attended this, they're gonna get free crazy bread free crazy bread. But the beautiful thing about that from a marketing piece is that on the crazy bread, my song is called Go Crazy, and Go Crazy is on the crazy bread. And so it just brought everything into it, like from the people
Cool.
to bring in town. So that was just a great experience, man. Like being able to be the first halftime performance, like a musical halftime performance. That's what they said. I was the first person ever to do a halftime performance with the band. And I was like, wow, that's so cool to think about.
And to be able to use that talent. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. Well, do you have any, I don't know, I mean, you probably don't want to rap for us or anything before we go, but anything like something you could leave us with? Just something that, whatever you feel.
Yeah. Oh, you talking about like as a nugget, as a song, as a lyric?
Yeah, maybe you have just a special quote or you've got a like something catchy or I don't know, something that
Yeah.
can help those that maybe aren't believing in themselves right now, that feel
Yeah.
disconnected, that are looking for I don't know. This podcast, we like to leave them at the end to know that, if you can get out there, if I can get out there, if we're trying to do hard things, that we can connect. We can have that social health. We can have better communication. And some people, we get stuck in this new age and this new technology, and it's all here. It's not so much eye-to-eye contact, and we're missing that social piece, like you said.
That's real. And what I would like to tell people to just to leave off on a note is that pressure is no match for purpose, right? We all go through the pressures physically, mentally, emotionally, environmentally, but don't allow that pressure to overmatch what you're supposed to do in your life, right? So that's the message that I always tell people in regards to wanting to get to that next level or aspiration in their life. And that coin phrase came from me growing up. I remember through the thin walls of our 600 square foot apartment, I used to hear soft crying, muttering, and erratic breathing on the other side of my wall. And it was late at night, and I remember getting out of my bed and walking over to it. And as I was like sitting on that wall, the sobbing and the crying used to get more frequent and intensified to the point where like my body just fell to the ground. My face was covered in tears because I couldn't bear hear the other person on the other side continue to cry because the other person was my mom. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember like after wiping my face, I finally mustered up the courage to ask my mom, like, are you okay? And I remember her response, her first initial response was, Mama's okay. And I knew she was lying because my mom was like super stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I knew she was crying because of her inability to support me. And so I asked her again, a little bit more firm. I said, Mom, are you okay? And in her response is a response that I still live with to this day. And she said, everything will be all right. I promise. And so to me, that phrase to me is like, no matter what I go through in life, like the pressures that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
like it would never be a match to like the purpose that I'm ultimately trying to get to. And that whatever fire that I have to go through, I'm gonna endure it. The capacity that I have to build, I'm gonna endure it because at the end of the day, everything will be all right. And so that's another thing that I'll leave off with people is that piece right there.
Is that when you're going through the toughest things in the world, that it's going to be okay. Tomorrow's a new day.
That's all I say. Everything will be all right.
I
Everything.
love that. Well, I know when I had to leave that meeting, I gave you a hug, and you were way taller than me. But you know what? I realized I'm like, you just had this amazing energy about you. Just a good, like it makes me emotional. Just this good, solid person who has been through some hard things, but is here to help, inspire. And I just wanted to, thank you for that. And I want other people to get a chance to get to know you, Kenneth, because you really are an amazing person. And I was really grateful for the connection that we got to have.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like moments like these is what it's all about, man. I'm over here getting teary eyed too. You over here, girl, you about to have Lord, you get me teary eyed over here too. So I'm
But
sorry.
it's all about those relationships.
Yeah,
And that's probably what I felt from you when I hugged you was like, you really care.
yeah.
You really care about the people that you've even met for a few minutes. And those are those rare hearts of gold that not everybody has, right?
It's so man, I feel like we are on this earth to deliver that purpose to and be of service to others. Like I mentioned, I mentor at a youth detentional center, and this kid that I'm mentoring right now, he's going to be in there for at least 10 years.
Mm.
So like he's going to transition from juvenile to the county and to go into adulthood. And during our conversations, I've been seeing this growth ever since. And he hit me with something that kind of like like almost made me tear up in a moment because he just mentioned like all the stuff he was going through and how and I asked him a simple question like, hey, after everything is done, you serve your time, you held accountable for all the things that you've done or did in the past.
Mhm.
Like, what is it that you want to do with the rest of your life? And he was like, I want to do what you're doing. I want to be on the opposite side of the table, helping someone else. And that almost broke me down because I'm like, man, he sees it now. Like, and that's right there is the reason why I do what I do for people because I just want them to know like there is a greater side or there is the other side to this current situation. You don't have to be defined by it and you can still grow. And as long as you're serving something outside of yourself and being the best version of you that you can be, you can do a lot of things. And so that kid right there just had like a gentle reminder to me that everything gonna be all right. Like,
Mhm.
and what I am doing is enough because there's gonna be points in times where I feel like, man, am I doing enough? And
Right.
so his response to my question I asked him just reminded me that you are doing enough.
You are.
You're gonna
When
be
you
all
can even inspire the one person, it reminds me, this Christian-based show my husband and I saw, TJ loved it. It was called The Forge. It's on Netflix, but it
right.
was about that same kind of thing where mentors mentor and it changes the generations. It was such a cool show. I think you'd like it.
The forage. You gonna
The
have to send me
Forge.
that link. I'm gonna have to watch that.
It was good. I just thought I'd bring it up because that's what I see you doing as this mentor helping inspire the youth. So I think you'd really enjoy it.
I love
But
it.
I want to just say thanks so much. And if we want to find you, just tell us the website real quick, and we'll put
Yeah.
some of the links down below. But
Yeah, so if you guys want to follow me, feel free. I'm one of the most open people in the world. My website is kennethscott.me and my Instagram is at kscott_2. And it's the same thing for Twitter, even though I hardly get on Twitter, but Instagram is my main thing. I love Instagram. I share a lot of stuff. And if you want to follow me, feel free, connect. That's what I'm all about. Don't be a stranger. I love engaging in topics and conversations. So feel free to follow me, shoot me a text, call me if you want to do an event, workshop, summit, conference, whatever it is. I would love to connect and we'll work it out from there.
well, and as you guys all know, you're pretty amazing. We're so grateful for your time. And thank you for just being vulnerable, sharing some of that hard. I think that's the thing is when we can create that, other people can grow because sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable and share because we're all dealing with problems. Just some people are holding it in.
That's real. That's real.
Well, thank you, Kenneth. We'll talk to you soon, and we appreciate you so, so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much.